Hey guys, welcome to That Florida Feeling. How is everybody? I hope everybody's good. I know that there is a hurricane out there now. Usually said August or September. Here it comes. Hopefully it curves. I mean, everybody's out there yelling pivot. We don't really want this one. This is a big one. We don't really want any of them. But if we do have to deal with one, I hope everybody's prepared. I know that Publix usually runs their 10 for 10 canned vegetables and things like that right around now. So I guess stock up if you haven't. Hope everybody enjoyed last week's episode about Hemingway and his cats. I got a lot of good feedback on it, so definitely doing more museums from now on. I'll add it to that in the state parks. Thank you to everybody who's checked out the social medias as far as like TikTok and Facebook and Instagram and X or Twitter, whatever we call it. And don't forget to check out YouTube. The podcast is on YouTube, and I do have all the episodes on there, as well as some videos of me just roaming through the Sunshine State and trying out some different restaurants. So, today we're going to talk about a place in Florida well known, and it shouldn't surprise you that it's got a lot of stuff hiding in it. And I'm talking about a place in the Everglades. And as you know, I mean, the Everglades is a pretty interesting place, one that needs to be protected and preserved, but also one that's hiding, we'll call them secrets. Is it hiding the skunk ape? Probably. Is it hiding dead bodies? I'm going to go with yeah, absolutely. But did you know that it's also hiding some ghost towns? I mean, that shouldn't surprise you. People have been trying to settle in the Everglades for years, and some succeed for a little bit. Some don't succeed at all. Some give up. Some still somehow make it. But this is the town of Flamingo, Florida. And Flamingo has a very interesting past. Flamingo now, though, is the southernmost headquarters of the Everglades National Park in Monroe County, Florida. And I mean the very, very southern end, very southern tip, like all the way down. And fun fact, it's actually really pretty. Flamingo is one of the two endpoints of the 99-mile Wilderness Waterway. The other endpoint is at the Gulf Coast Visitor Center in Everglades City. So this is one end of it. The other one is in Everglades City. And this is the southern end of the only road running it just about 40 miles through the park from Florida City. And it did not begin as obviously a headquarter. It began as actually a settlement or a city. It was a very small coastal settlement on the eastern end of Cape Sable, which is basically the very southern tip of the Florida Peninsula, and I mean very southern, facing Florida Bay. And it's an actual town. The actual town of Flamingo was approximately 4.5 miles west of the actual current Flamingo campground. And you can still see what used to remain of this former town because there are still buildings standing, which says a lot for how many tropical storms and hurricanes and things have hit that area. But it is a ghost town, one of Florida's many ghost towns. But to me, this is one of the most unique. So let's talk about Flamingo. Flamingo was originally settled in 1892. Although the Tequesta Indians had lived in the area prior to that, this is really one of the first European settlements. Words, y'all. The settlers made a living by providing fish and fresh vegetables and even charcoal over to Key West. So trade routes, agriculture, fishing, that was really what got them settled and founded and made a living. And the settlement received its name in 1893 when settlers had to choose their name for their new post office. They didn't know what to do, so they chose Flamingo because it was the most distinctive bird that they had seen in that area. And while flamingos usually don't breed in Florida, the birds that they do come from Cuba and the Bahamas. They come to the area in large numbers. They They don't come as much anymore, although I know that we've all seen the pictures from the hurricanes, like especially Ian. I know that there was a large flock of flamingos that got blown off track and ended up in Tampa Bay, a little bit further south. So flamingos did used to really, really call Florida home, hence why it's in my little podcast picture. And that's really where they got their name from. And Flamingo actually used to be kind of a large settlement. I mean, it had quite a few people that called it home. But of course, it didn't last long. The birds or the people, actually. Flamingos, the birds weren't really seen in the area past 1902, and the post office closed in 1909, which means people weren't really seen in the area past 1910. Leverett White Brunell, a naturalist, visited Flamingo, the town, in 1893, and he described the village of 38, what he called shacks on stilts, to be infested with fleas and mosquitoes. He claimed to have seen an oil lamp actually extinguished by a cloud of mosquitoes. That does sound like the Everglades. He also stated that the flea powder was the staff of life, as people put that everywhere. The cabins were thickly sooted from the use of it, and they also used smudge pots, which smudge pots are something that they used to use to prevent frost to grow on fruit trees or for other things. But he did say that the agriculture was rich there, that tomatoes, asparagus, and eggplants were their main crops. So while he hated the mosquitoes, he did note that it had a booming agricultural usage. At least he had something nice to say. Flamingo was a small boom. It actually did have a little boom era in the early 20th century when spectators thought that Henry Flagler would actually choose a route that his Florida East Coast Railway would actually cut across Florida Bay to Key West. By about 1900, 50 families actually lived in Flamingo. So that's families, not people. So you're looking at close to 200 people, maybe. That's pretty good for that little tiny town. And it actually even had a Monroe County school. So it had a post office, it had a school, it had agriculture. It was technically grown to be a decent settlement at that time. And of course, nearby rookeries, such as the famed Cuthbert Rookery, became popular. And by the way, a rookery is a place where you can breed birds. There's a couple, I know that at least there's one rookery up near St. Augustine, but it's a place where they breed birds. But the rookeries became popular poachers who sought to kill the nesting birds for their plumage, because back in the early 1900s, they would kill certain birds for the feathers for hats for women. It's definitely in fashion, which is actually kind of why some birds in Florida went extinct, thanks to people in these areas. Residents and early game warden Guy Bradley was actually shot and killed in Flamingo after confronting plume hunters. And so this was actually a well-known resident of Flamingo. He was the early game warden, Guy Bradley. He was also a deputy sheriff for the Monroe County, Florida. He was born in Chicago, but he actually relocated to Florida when he was really young. So he's kind of a new Floridian. But it's really sad because he was really well known in that area. And unfortunately, he was killed by these poachers. But due to his murder, public rage over his murder actually words are not working with me today, guys. I'm sorry. Actually led directly to federal legislation that outlawed the practice. So if women wanted plumage in their hats, it now had to be fake feathers. So something good came from his unfortunate murder. But Flamingo continued to grow, or at least survive. A fish house was built in Flamingo in 1908, and fishing actually became then the primary occupation of the town. It shifted from agriculture to mainly fishing. But it only lasted about 2 to 3 years. By 1910, only 3 homes remained occupied in Flamingo. The Ingram Highway from Homestead reached Flamingo in 1922, but unfortunately it was poorly maintained, virtually impassable due to the wet weather and the condition of the Everglades. The National Park Service did not give it a gravel top until the 1940s, which would have made it a little bit better. And this made a lot of people not really have the ability to stay. So between the hurricanes, especially like the 1928 hurricane in Okeechobee, a lot of other events, there was another couple hurricanes really bad that came through there, and just conditions living in the Everglades, Flamingo really didn't have a chance. But during Prohibition, the people who still stayed in Flamingo, which was not that many, actually had a good run. Moonshining became a major occupation in Flamingo. And it took the government officials a long time to get there due to the condition of the roads. So, Flamingo did have a good couple runs between agriculture, fishing, and then moonshining, that it actually stayed a town for quite a bit, up until about the 1940s. Now, you can actually still visit the remains of Flamingo today. The Snakebite Trail provides an alternate pedestrian access to the sea to the east of Flamingo. It is 2 miles and it is covered in mosquitoes. The Christian Point Trail is also another one. It is less daunting. It does lead through open saltwater prairies. But just be aware that that part is a little bit that part has a couple more stories attached to it. The area kind of got its name due to the fact that the Labor Day hurricane of 1935 took a lot of people out, and it also brought a lot of dead bodies back in from the Keys in that area. So some people say that area is a bit, shall we say, haunted. There's also a couple of mass graves in that area. If you go and look at the map of the hurricane victims that are buried or cremated on Christian Point from 1935, they're right around that trail. Because I was researching this and I was like, why do I keep finding maps for burial victims? I was so confused. So upon further research, there actually is there are mass graves right down that trail. Not marked. I didn't find anything that showed a markage for them, but it was very strange to me that trail leads right around those graves. And then people would say that they would hear footsteps around them but couldn't find anything. I don't know. It just seems like I would probably not take that trail if I wanted to go to it. Now, Flamingo still exists today, technically. The residents of Flamingo were relocated shortly after the creation of Everglades National Park, so some people still do live there, guys. The ghost town itself, though, is a couple miles to the side of it. Through the second half of the 20th century, Flamingo it consisted of a restaurant and a cafe, a gas station, a marina, a store, a campground, a gift shop, and a few houses for park rangers. In 1959, the two-story Flamingo Lodge did open with 103 rooms, and 24 cabins were built as well. Of course, they've gone through some fun times like everybody else in South Florida due to hurricanes. Most of these facilities, however, were severely damaged or destroyed in 2005 by storm surges up to 9 feet during Hurricane Wilma. The marina and the store did reopen, but as of 2009, the lodge and cabins were pretty much razed, and the gas station never reopened. So, can you still visit it? Yes, absolutely. But there's not a lot to visit now. Now, of course, there are still things that people do in that area. There are still some plans to actually improve ecotourism in Flamingo, which is something that's been really big in Florida in the past, I would say, 5 to 10 years. They've talked about rebuilding the destroyed facilities. They do want to keep the historic gas station and Mission 66 visitor facility, which, is kind of interesting. I think it's great that they're wanting to preserve the history. They also want to do handicap access to the employee housing and the backwater chickees, which a chickie is a shelter, basically on posts with raised floors. And if you've ever been and visited a couple different places, you will see examples of chickees. They were houses used by the Creek and the Miccosukee. The Miccosukee and the Seminoles. And basically, it has like a palmetto thatch covering on huge poles, and it's up off the ground so that if it does flood or anything happens, you're not like standing in water, which I think is really cool. Uh, they are also talking about building actual full elevated cabins as well, and using earth-friendly technology such as solar hot water heaters and harvesting systems such as rain barrels. They do actually have an amphitheater for camping, which is kind of cool. I don't know that I would sit in the mosquitoes, but I think it's really cool that people want to do it. And they do have something that they tested back probably 10 years ago called an eco tent, which was a new type of lodging. And basically, it was an elevated tent structure, which kind of is like a chickie. And it took advantage of the breeze coming off the Florida Bay. So it kind of like provided its own, we'll say, air conditioning. And, you know, it's kind of cool that they're trying out these new systems, or that they're trying to rebuild the area or allow people to still, see the beauty of the Everglades in this area, because this really is a pretty area of Florida that most people don't realize that they can visit or that they should visit. You can still go to the marina. There's a freshwater side of the marina that you can go to on the Wilderness Waterway. And they did reopen the Flamingo Lodge and Restaurant in October of 2023 after finishing it up and fixing all the damage. There is a Guy Bradley Visitor Center that you can visit as well. It is really hard to miss. It is a huge pink building overlooking Florida Bay. And it offers a lot of services. You can get your camping permits. You can get maps. There's educational displays, informational brochures. Of course, the restaurant and bar, which I think is cool. It's called the Buttonwood Cafe. And this is actually, fun fact, the only place to eat inside the Everglades National Park. And they offer dining services only during the winter season. So in the summer, nope. But during the winter season, you can absolutely eat there. It was destroyed back in 2005 by Wilma, and then Irma gave it basically a direct hit in 2017, and it finally reopened just a couple years ago in 23. So I think that's great. I think it's cool that they put a cafe and a restaurant in there. And Flamingo is great for a lot of things. It is one of the interpretive centers for the Everglades National Parks. Of course, there's some hiking trails out of it. Like I said, the Snake Bright Trail, the Christian Point Trail, which is the one that I wouldn't go on because of the graves. The Rowdy Bend Trail and the Coastal Prairie Trail all come out of it, but you can go through the different ecosystems that are just in that part of the Everglades, the Buttonwoods, the mangroves, and the coastal prairies. And if you take the Coastal Prairie Trail, that's the one that leads to the former actual town of Flamingo. That's where you can go see the remnants of buildings, what the town would have looked like, where it would have sat. And it's worth the hike, guys. It really is. I'll post some pictures that I found on the internet. I've not been to the former town of Flamingo, but I do know the area that they're talking about. I've only been to the Everglades National Park. But of course, you can do things other than hike. They have paddling opportunities where you can actually go through the mangroves and the open waters, because basically the Everglades is just a huge moving river of grass, and it's amazing. But you can also actually paddle into the open waters of Florida Bay, which is really, really cool. And some of it's kind of shallow due to mud banks, so it's really interesting. They also have guided boat tours, which go out of Flamingo. You can rent kayaks and canoes, and they have an actual map of canoe trails, which can go, a very short distance, or you can go the whole 99 miles up the Wilderness Waterway, and all come out of Flamingo. You can even rent houseboats out of the marina, which I thought was very kind of interesting and cool. Now, one beautiful thing about where Flamingo is and kind of the Everglades National Park is that it is absolutely perfect as a dark site. And a dark site means that it is perfect for stargazing, astrophotography, or Milky Way photography, which means that there is less light pollution than most areas in Florida due to its proximity to Miami. So you can see very detailed views of like the Milky Way structure and the stars and just anything in the sky, because it's not near Miami or Homestead or Florida City, or it's not near the Keys, and you're far enough away from Naples. And so that one reason alone, if you're definitely into like astronomy, would be a reason to visit Flamingo. If you're looking for something to do, especially in the Everglades. And like I said, you can paddle through it to the Wilderness Waterway, which is a really cool thing that's actually in Florida. I don't think I've ever really mentioned it on the podcast. If I have, it's just been in passing. It is 99 miles long. You can use additional routes to extend or shorten your trip to get from A to B. And it does take about 8 days to complete this trip. It really is for experienced people only. Don't be like, I'm going to canoe for my first time and try this. Please don't do that. Um, and I will say a lot of it is shallow because you're going through the Everglades. A lot of it is through shallow waters. Um, if you're in kind of a deeper, if you're not in such like a paddleboard or a canoe or a kayak, you're probably going to need to go through different passes. Um, and then there's other passes called night, like such as Nightmare Pass is only passable during high tide. So there are, there are certain things you have to watch for when going down Wilderness Waterway, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. There are places located along the river where you can camp, and there's even chickees that they have constructed along where you can camp, which is really really cool. And again, chickees are those huts with the raised platforms that you can sleep on, usually elevated, so that you don't have to deal with sleeping in the water. But you can't put a campfire on the chickees, obviously. You don't burn them down. They did say that sometimes accessing the chickees from the paddle, from your actual boat, can be a little bit different. So you're going to need like a heavy rope or a rope ladder to get to it. There are also ground sites that you can access, such as some of the beaches. But it's a really beautiful thing to see, especially from the waterway, because you kind of get to see things like shell mounds that were built by the Calusa that most people don't get to see because you can't drive up to it. Or Watson's Place, which was a shell mound site occupied by a sugarcane farmer and criminal Ed Watson. Yes, he was a criminal. I'll talk about him later, but he was absolutely a criminal in the early 20th century. And then Darwin's Place, which was a shell mound occupied by Arthur Darwin, hermit of the Everglades from the 1940s to the 1980s. And anyone attempted to paddle the waterway would have to pass Darwin's Place, and he became famous because of the paddling community. You could catch glimpses of him. And so that's another thing that's really good about Flamingo, is that is one place that is the end of the waterway, and you can launch from it or to it. But it's really interesting to talk about these kind of like ghost towns in the Everglades, because there's so much history and things around them that people don't realize that was ever there. And especially with Flamingo. And it really really was a ghost town. And it is the southernmost entrance into the Everglades. And it's gorgeous. I mean, you're going to see a lot of wildlife. You're going to see all of the alligators you want and all the mosquitoes you want. But you're going to see some beautiful birds, some amazing, if you go fishing, some amazing fish. But you're also going to see the remains, if you go to the town, of the people who really tried to make it work. They had a post office. They had a school. They had, they wanted to make Flamingo work as a new place to be in Florida. And it really was thriving there for a little bit. But the Everglades it's tough, But remember, if you do choose to hike it, part of it can be flooded. So just choose the right time. Don't go during a hurricane. And understand that some of the trails aren't maintained by the National Park Service. Just letting you know. Also, some of the trails don't allow bikes. Just letting you know. Because like some of them have mangroves, and you're not going to cut down a mangrove. Well, people do. They shouldn't. But you know, just know that you could run into some wildlife, guys. There are Burmese pythons that are out and about, but you could also see some beautiful, absolutely gorgeous wildlife. You might even see an actual flamingo, and that's what's really cool about it. This is one of those things that if you're definitely into nature, this is not to be overlooked. And you can actually go to Flamingo Adventures. They actually have an entire page about if you want to do eco tours or houseboats or glamping. They even have the lodge that they talk about. It's gorgeous to actually go and look at. It's only an hour and 45 from Miami. If you go through Homestead, two-ish hours from Fort Lauderdale. But it's really cool. If you're looking for something new to do in Florida and you're an outdoors person, I definitely recommend checking out Flamingo. Some of Florida's definite forgotten history in the Everglades that has somehow stood the test of time. But again, remember, you're going to need some sunscreen, you're going to need some water, you're going to need some bug repellent. You will run into some alligators, possibly some pythons. You'll get to see some beautiful birds, some amazing stows at night, and you might even run into Florida man. Good chance you're going to run into Florida man. But this Florida man that I stumbled upon, I guess this story is making its rounds again, isn't the bad Florida man. He didn't do something dumb. He actually did something nice. This is from 2019, so I guess it's making its rounds. It's out of Newport Richey, which is near Tampa. So apparently this family was at a park, and the little girl was in the SUV still, and her parents accidentally closed the door with keys inside, and it locked. And sheriff's deputies were called. They advised the people to call a locksmith, but the family couldn't afford it. So the father was preparing to smash the window when they got some help from a really unusual Florida man, or actually Florida men. There was a work gang from the local penitentiary out maintaining the grass, doing some grass cutting and picking up trash in the car park in the like near where the family was, and they noticed the family was in distress and they offered assistance. And you can actually find the video online. The girl's mom actually filmed it. It was really kind of funny. I went and looked at the video, and it's true. This is really cool. So the prisoners actually fashioned a hook from a coat hanger. Some inmates pulled the door back just enough to not mess up the door, and one put the wire in and was able to hit the unlock button to get into the car. And they're doing this all while in just what you'd think, black and white striped jumpsuits. And the girl's mother said, "Thank God for criminals in the world. I truly respect y'all," which is kind of fun to say. And it's, these Florida men came out of nowhere and they were very helpful. And the sheriff's spokesman said that the prisoners were low-risk inmates and trustees who had received extra privileges, such as the right to carry out supervised work outside of the prison walls, and they had just shown their trust. And they had thanked the work gang for putting their lock-picking skills to a noble use for once. And so I guess not every Florida man that you meet is going to be so bad or so drunk. So some of them can be pretty good. If you guys enjoyed learning about the ghost town of Flamingo in the Everglades, if you guys have any suggestions about what you want to hear, please reach out. Let me know. I really enjoyed doing museums. I'm going to do it more in the future and some state parks. But if you want to hear about anything, let me know. Don't forget, if you are looking for a new podcast, check out Unfiltered Studios. Plenty of people doing amazing things over there. Also, I am in a podcast showdown on X. I'll be retweeting it every time it comes around. But yeah, you got to go vote for that Florida feeling when you see my tweets. I got to win this. Don't forget to check out the other social media pages, guys. Thank you for sticking around through these episodes for the last 4 years. I wouldn't be here without you. So be nice, guys. Be prepared for hurricanes. Hopefully not one hits, but just be prepared in case. Wear your sunscreen, drink your water. And as always, guys, That's your daily dose of sunshine.
This podcast is a production of Unfiltered Studios. If you would like to know more about joining Unfiltered Studios, please visit our website at unfpod.com for more information.